Hey everyone, welcome to Talking Tokens, a podcast focused on interviewing the best crypto founders, market players, and up-and-coming startups that are changing the industry every single Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Jacquelyn Melinek, your award-nominated host and former senior crypto reporter turned entrepreneur, and I'm excited to be here with you all. Now, let's get into it. Today's guest is Austin King, the co-founder of Omni Network. Omni is backed by Pantera, Coinbase Ventures, Jump Capital, and others. The network has over 7.5 million transactions, about 400,000 users, and has over 30 ecosystem partners, including Injective, Arbitrum, Optimism, and others. It aims to be a blockchain that combines modular components into an integrated system. I had to write this down. So developers can create applications that seamlessly operate across all rollups. If you don't know what that means, don't worry. It was a lot of jargon. We'll have Austin break it down for us. With all that said, Austin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So Austin and I have known each other for a while now. I actually covered his company's funding round years ago when it was Rift Finance. To start, can you tell us a little bit about the journey from that to where you are today?
Yeah, gladly. So originally Rift, at this point, when was this? About
maybe 2021?
Almost 3 years ago. Yeah. So originally we built a DeFi protocol, which you covered in Blockworks. Thank you for that. So we built this DeFi protocol. We don't need to get too in the weeds about it, but it was a DeFi protocol on Ethereum L1, and things went really well on Ethereum L1. We got 50 mil TVL in I think 2 days. And though rollups didn't have a ton of traction at this time, my co-founder and I have always been more in the research area of crypto. And so we knew the future of Ethereum was rollups at this point. So we started thinking about how we would scale Rift, the protocol, to these different rollups. Looked at a few of these different kind of cross-chain. There's a number of ways that these platforms brand themselves. We looked at a few of these different solutions and effectively weren't happy with both the performance and security properties of any of them. So we started to build our own custom solution for how, as Ethereum developers ourselves, we would build across multiple rollups. And so eventually in this process, we were talking with colleagues in the space, and basically anybody who's doing really well on Ethereum L1 was thinking about the same problem. How do we best position these protocols for this future of Ethereum where there are a bunch of different L2s out there and capturing audiences across all of them? And so at a certain point in this, we realized that if we committed to building this as just a generalized platform that anybody could use, it was going to be a far more valuable contribution to the space than really any DeFi protocol. And so, yeah, that's kind of where Omni came from. That's what Omni is. It's a way for people to build applications across all the rollups in the Ethereum ecosystem at large.
And I'm guessing the name Omni comes from Omni Chains?
Yeah, just Omni, just all of it, just
Omni everything. All right.
Yeah, it's nice. It's 4 characters. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then Austin, a little bit about you. Can you tell us about yourself, how you got into crypto? Sure. Why'd you start a company?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Multiple layers I could start here.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to build companies. Even in high school, I had dumb little businesses where I would sell things on the internet for people who didn't know how to use eBay and stuff. Starting university, the plan was always to start a startup once I graduated. Junior summer, I had an internship at Microsoft and I didn't have to do anything. Literally, my boss told me you can go on hikes every day if you want. So I was like,
it's like a day in a life TikTok. You know what I mean?
Literally one of those TikToks. And so, yeah, I didn't really have any responsibilities at Microsoft. So I just started studying crypto. I started teaching myself Solidity, got really interested in it. And honestly, a lot of it clicked for me back then. And maybe I went a little overboard with it, but I do think we'll see this play out. But in my head, it was we're going to run governments on this. This is a crazy globalization primitive that we haven't had previously. It's sovereign internet money. And so, yeah, I was fully pilled on it back then and just fully committed to creating a crypto startup my senior year. So my senior year was a lot of running around, trying to figure out how to contribute the most value to the space. This was actually a previous company that I built. I built that for 2 years, sold it to Ripple, stayed there for a year to vest, and then quit to build this company. But that's originally how I got involved in crypto at large.
Okay. So do you think you would launch another company after this, or Omni?
Yeah, 100%.
Omni's it?
No.
Omni everything?
Well, I think I'll be building companies either until I die or have children. Maybe still building companies when I have kids. I don't know. I think about this sometimes.
Does life end when you have kids?
No, it just gets different, right?
Yeah,
right. Different priorities.
I'm kidding.
But hopefully not. But yeah, no, I've definitely got decades of work that I want to do for sure.
That's actually interesting. Before we get into everything Omni, I feel like a lot of people, they always talk about how starting a startup is not what they think it is. And so the fact that you want to continue to do this, what's in it for you? I guess like
masochism. Like, no, I mean, honestly,
like, why do you love it? I guess is the question here.
We're just at a point where contributing to some key technologies can have more leverage on your personal life and on society than ever before in human history. Like, if we zoom out, recently crypto was invented. Like, sure, was it a bit over a decade ago? That is true. But still, objectively, when you compare it to other like cloud technologies, it's terrible performance-wise. Like, it's impractical to use it in many ways. But this is the type of thing which has the ability to unseat the American Federal Reserve really as like the global controlling financial power. So something as insanely high leverage as that is really in the hands of people who experiment with tech today, specifically crypto. And then AI also is extremely high leverage, but those are really the two key dimensions. And for me, crypto just aligns far more with what I care about because I care about freedom for people, and crypto gives people that.
No, I hear you. I agree with that. We talked a little bit about Omni in the beginning. I asked you why you started it, etc. And I think we threw around some jargony terms. Can you kind of explain it in layman's terms? Like if you were talking to someone outside of this industry, how would you say what you do and what you built?
So if you're outside the industry, basically what is Omni? It's the first blockchain built to complement Ethereum, not compete with it. And we can go into all the weeds of like how we made it super performance optimized and all this stuff of like taking these different modules to do that. That's not the important part. The important part is like the Ethereum ecosystem is evolving in a way where core infrastructure layers are developing around the L1 network itself. And so Omni exists as a layer to facilitate the developer experience of building across all these different rollups. It connects them all together in a way that they can securely pass messages when it's in a way that's secured by ETH itself. So at a zoomed out level, what is Omni? It's a way to build apps and just access all the users. That's really what like the output of what it is. We can go into the tech of how that is achieved, but that's really like our end goal here. It's just we want to empower developers to build and access all the users in the Ethereum ecosystem. We've kind of walked into this fragmented dystopia right now, and there's just like a very clear need for an integration layer across all these different rollups. And so that's what Omni is.
Okay, that makes sense. And I understand, and I'm sure hopefully our listeners do as well. But on the front of rollups are a way for you to kind of create a transaction on a separate chain, right? And then settle it on Ethereum. Is that correct?
Yeah,
is
it's
that
batching. We can use all these fancy terms, but it's batching. That is what rollups do.
Yeah. And then for the front of Ethereum's, you were talking about developers, some of the problems they have. What are those issues that they've been bringing up to you? What are some of the like kinks or threats to Ethereum that you guys are really trying to fix here?
Yeah, I think comparing this against Solana is a great way to think about it. So when you go to Solana, it's all there in one place. You don't need to think about bridging or like which platform you're executing on. That is not the case with Ethereum. Ethereum's great because we have this extremely decentralized base layer, but a majority of the activity, like by an order of magnitude at this point, is happening on these L2s, these rollups, these batching platforms. And the way that they are designed and connected today is that they're not really connected. They're only connected through the L1, and the L1 is super slow and expensive. So if you're trying to like move from Arbitrum to Optimism, it's expensive and takes a ton of time. What we need is a clear integration, like an infrastructure layer that integrates them all together so that they can communicate seamlessly. That is a clear gap in the Ethereum infrastructure stack right now. I think we're going to continue to, I think the way Ethereum scales and wins is we build more infrastructures like infrastructure layers like this around the core L1 network. That's kind of our perspective on how Ethereum is going to outcompete other chains over time.
Why do you think it was missing beforehand? Like, why was that not already implemented maybe from the beginning for Ethereum or earlier days by other developers?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Honestly, I think it's just kind of like a baby steps thing. Like for the longest time, Ethereum was insanely expensive, and that was extremely urgent to fix. Just how do we scale this thing? How can we handle more transactions at a cheaper rate? That if we didn't solve that first, there really was no future for Ethereum. So it's kind of like, all right, we solved that problem. But there is an implication to the side of that while we solve that, we kind of created other problems that are out there. So I think it's just more of kind of the natural path of gradually evolving over time.
Mm-hmm. And since you've launched Omni, it seems like it's been pretty successful. What are some of the conversations you've had with developers about what they want more of now?
Mm-hmm. Users.
I bet they want more users.
Yeah. I mean, so where this will go is we'll get to a point where we will leverage all these frontier infrastructure layers to make transactions free for end users. And we're going to use account abstraction, so nobody needs to think about 12 words in order just to use anything. Like, we're going to massively abstract the user experience, so it's just going to look like using the cloud. But today, where we're at is developers at minimum want to access all of Ethereum's users. And so that really is the simple value proposition of Omni. Just like build your application, let users from everywhere access it. Past that, there's a ton of really exciting things we're going to be able to do over the next, this is on a 1 to 4 year time frame. But you have to start somewhere, and there are just extremely clear problems today that we're solving. And we're going to really build upon that in the long term.
Okay. What are some of the other ones that you want to launch in the next 1 to 4 years? Do you have a little roadmap you could give us? Yeah,
I think many people are aware of this kind of modular design thesis. This is really coined by Celestia. And the idea of the whole modular design thesis is, this already happened in Web 2. It's called microservices. But basically we realized, hey, instead of just running a blockchain, what if we realize that there's multiple real responsibilities within a blockchain, and we piece those apart into independent networks, and we just optimized each of those. That is kind of what modular means. It's like, instead of running a chain, how about we just run a data availability network? Or how about we just run a proving network? What I don't think enough people are thinking about right now, and this is longer term, it's more the 1 to 4 year range, but it's going to have massive implications on everything from the infrastructure to the user experience, is what happens when we piece them back together into like an integrated way. That's why we refer to Omni as like the first integrated chain. It's because we decoupled these components and piece them back together and are just leveraging the best technology in each of those components. So I think once we get to a point where we are starting to integrate them back together, there's going to be account abstraction. People are going to be using crypto and not even be aware of it. They're just going to be like signing in with their email or their phone number. We'll remove this whole complexity of thinking about like MetaMask and transaction hashes. People clearly don't want to think about that level of complexity. Another huge component here is transaction costs. I think we're going to move into a world where there's going to be a fundamental unlock for users where they don't pay gas costs. Right now, anytime you transact on networks, you have to pay gas costs. Like, that just is the way that it is.
Right.
But if you think about Web 2 technologies, when you go to a website, you don't pay to load the website. That's kind of where we're at in crypto, where it's like, if somebody wanted to load a website, we make them pay the developers in order to do that. Where we're going to go is with data availability networks like Celestia and EigenDA. It's going to be cheap enough to make transactions that'll just be sponsored by the devs. It's just like, cool, you build an application, it costs like 1/100 of a penny anytime somebody wants to make a transaction. So you're just going to front the gas for them.
Right.
And to me, this is a really important psychological unlock, because the onboarding experience today is, hey, you heard about crypto, go buy a speculative, highly volatile asset, money thing, however you conceptualize it, and then send it to this network before you can do anything. That just puts you into a gambling mindset. Just like, I have to go put money into something that like I might lose tomorrow. And I think that's kind of why we're trapped in this degen, highly speculative phase. But as we abstract this stuff away, I think there's going to be like a massive unlock at the application layer. Maybe that's more than you were asking for, but that's kind of our perspective on how this is going to evolve.
No, I agree with you. And I think there's a world where we could have like this speculative side of things that you just talked about, but then there's also value in the blockchain technology, believe it or not. Yeah. We could have that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the speculation won't go away.
Yeah.
People like
making money or losing money.
Yeah, there is value in just...
They like the thrill.
People go to casinos, they know the odds. People do enjoy speculating. But crypto as a technology can facilitate far more than that. I really think it's just the steps of onboarding today that traps people into a casino type mindset. And in the coming years here, people will be using crypto applications and not even understand that or need to understand that.
Right. Because they don't even have to like pay for them is what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I feel like what you said about the Web2 applications, if I had to pay every time I logged into like my Gmail, I don't think people would use email. We wouldn't even be past like the early 90s of the internet if we had to pay for every single interaction.
Yeah.
And yet crypto, a lot of it is gated by that. Like some apps I see, it's like in order to even like sign up for it, I have to deposit ETH to it. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what I'm getting yet. Like, why am I going to give you my money?
And
my
definitely.
ETH, not money, fiat, whatever.
And so for a while, over the past 2 years, I've heard criticisms of like, where are the apps at? Everybody's just building infrastructure. But honestly, we needed to build out these core infrastructure networks so that we can provide apps that don't have a frankly terrible user experience. Every single crypto application out there today has a terrible user experience. If you compare it to Web 2, like there's not a single one because every single one
even
makes
Omni?
Even Omni right now. And that's just kind of the state of the technology currently. But we do have really exciting things in the pipeline, both Omni and the wider crypto ecosystem at large. There's like various EIPs that are in flight. So this will be changing, but there's work to be done here for sure.
Yeah. You brought up the idea of modularity, and I know Omni launched Octane the other month, and it has modular implementation to my knowledge. I'm sure you could explain it way better than I can. So can you kind of tell us why you guys decided to launch it and what it is?
This podcast is sponsored by Galaxy. And if you're immersed in the world of Web3, Galaxy is a name you need to know. As a decentralized super app with an impressive 21 million users, boasting over 100 million monthly transactions, Galaxy is elevating its impact with Gravity, the magnet chain for Web3. Gravity is designed for full chain abstraction, zero knowledge proof-based privacy, and rapid transaction speeds, all coming together to offer an unparalleled user experience. Gravity opens the door for developers to effortlessly build on the largest on-chain distribution platform, and for users, it promises an even smoother, more secure journey through Web3. It's not about being on-chain, it's about being on the right chain every single time. Galaxy is on a mission to onboard the world to Web3, and Gravity is the magnetic force that will propel that vision forward. Ready to launch your Web3 journey? Build the future on Gravity. Visit gravity.xyz for more information.
All right. I'm going to spend 10 seconds on the engineer description, just for any engineers who are listening. What is Octane? We took the engine API and from the Ethereum ecosystem and the ABCI 2.0 interface from the Cosmos ecosystem, and we let them talk to each other. Okay, zooming out, that's like tactically how it works. What does that mean? It means we're able to take the best execution clients out there and pair it with the best consensus clients. And so for a long time in this space, people have tried to create fast finality EVMs. There's been a number of attempts at this. Basically, what we built with Octane is instead of trying to recreate an EVM that had fast finality, we really just made it so that fast finality consensus algorithms could talk to high performance execution clients like EVMs. So what this allows us to do is take the best work from multiple parts of the industry and pair them together so that they can talk seamlessly. And the output of that is just an extremely high performance chain that has EVM functionality and is just like extremely thoroughly vetted because you can use execution clients that are run in the core Ethereum network itself. So maybe that's still a little too in the weeds, but that's really what Octane is. It's kind of this idea of instead of trying to do everything ourselves, we just created a nice way for these specialized components to talk to each other. So like these specialized modules, there's one part that handles high performance consensus, another part that handles high performance execution. And we let them talk to each other in a simple way. And that is what allows us to get really nice performance properties out of both the consensus and the execution side. And so, yeah, I mean, we've seen a ton of interest, like organic inbound interest, like teams like Celestia, Immutable, Story Protocol are just hitting us up, experimenting with this because it's objectively really good, like compared to any other fast finality EVM out there. The performance properties you get and the maintainability is just on a different level.
Okay. So it's live. It's live right now.
Audits are in flight right now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then what's kind of like the timeline for it to be out there for testing and everything?
Yeah. So Omni, well, people can go experiment with it today. It's also open source. That's another very important detail here. Previously, it took teams a lot of effort to go rebuild all this like EVM and like fast consensus. And so they would business license it previously. And it's like, okay, cool, nice product, but you have to like go pay this team. There's a lot of friction. It's actually out there as open source code today. So anybody can go experiment with it. But in terms of timeline, Omni is going to be the first chain in production using this, and that'll be in the coming months. But past that, there's a bunch of teams experimenting with it, and they'll be running it as rollups as well as chains.
Okay. Kind of shifting gears, or maybe like going into another part of Omni, we didn't talk about security and restaking. Before we get into that, can you kind of explain for everyone what restaking is? How does it compare to staking? And what role do you guys play in that?
Yeah, so restaking is the idea. I will explain actually our design decisions at Omni, and I think that will put important color on what restaking is. So originally, when we tried to let blockchain platforms talk to each other, we had multi-sigs. It was literally just like some people would be like, Ethereum looks like this, so we're going to send this message to Solana. And you get like 3 of 5 people to approve that. This is how Wormhole works, for example, still today. Innovating upon that a little bit, teams like Axelar built a network where if those people managing the multi-sig misbehave, they'll lose money. So in order to be like one of these 3 of 5, Axelar has more nodes than this, but in order to be like an authorizing entity, you have to stake AXL. And it'll be, if you lie about what happened, you're going to get your AXL slashed, which is like their governance token, and you're going to lose money. So we were considering using a technology like this as we were trying to scale Rift. But basically what you get out of that is pretty fragile security properties. And so we met the EigenLayer team about 2 years ago. And as we were thinking of the different ways of how to build an Ethereum native way to build across all these different rollups, it really clicked for us. So like, what is restaking? It's the idea of using ETH, the asset, to secure other networks. And so this is how we secure Omni. All the nodes in the network are restaking ETH. And so this allows us to have like far higher levels of economic security. And the security is also less volatile because it's not the Omni asset exclusively, it is also ETH. So here's now an explain it like I'm 5 example. I'm going to plagiarize from a tweet that I thought was pretty funny. It was that restaking is the idea of taking an orange and squeezing all the orange juice out into a glass, and then putting it in the freezer and freezing it back into the shape of an orange. And they're like, boom, $20 billion valuation for EigenLayer. So like that is really what restaking is. But the nuance there is that you can freeze the orange juice into any shape you want. So you don't need to shape it back into how the Ethereum network operates. You can actually take that orange juice, which is ETH, and freeze it into the shape of a more high performance network like Omni, purpose built to complement that slower, more costly, but more decentralized base Ethereum L1 network. So those are kind of the 2 explanations for restaking that I have.
And restaking only applies to EVM compatible chains, or does it apply to non-Ethereum based chains?
The funny thing here is that it can apply anywhere. This idea originally, maybe there were predecessors before this, but it came from Polkadot. This idea of shared security at large, where other networks would be able to share security from the core DOT ecosystem. The Cosmos ecosystem also had an implementation of this. And honestly, my take is that restaking really took off in the ETH ecosystem because it was just the biggest network. It made the most sense because ETH is an insanely high market cap asset and it's extremely liquid. So it's kind of can give you the most sound security properties, but you can use it to do anything. The whole idea is just like people take their ETH and they say they're going to do things. If they do those things, cool, they get paid for from the profit of the network. If they don't do those things, they lose their ETH. So you can run it. You can use that to run an EVM. You can also use it to run an Oracle network or a decentralized prover network or a Move VM. It's entirely arbitrary.
Okay. Following that, I know earlier this year, the liquid staking protocol EtherFi said they would commit $600 million in Ether to Omni, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that came about, and what that really means for your network?
Yeah, I think this was a really interesting point in the evolution of restaking at large, because the year started out and our goal with Omni was launch it with with security properties entirely in their own category. So show that, we started out with networks like Wormhole. There were advancements and we moved to things like Axelar that had better security properties, but launch it with something that just had fundamentally like Ethereum grade security. So our goal there was like, okay, what allows us to do that? About $1 billion worth of crypto economic security is roughly like its own category. So at this time, I think there was about 2 bill in Eigenlayer at this point. There's like 20 now. So we were like, okay, this is our goal to like really demonstrate how Ethereum grade this network can be. So we didn't know it was going to go to 20 bill. But so we started talking with these LRT teams. The really interesting thing here is that LRTs, for anybody who's
what's an LRT?
Listening, like what is an LRT? It's a liquid restaking token. So basically, of course, why not add more layers onto this?
Go ahead, yeah.
But so basically, it's a way for you to put your ETH into a protocol, and it delegates across these different networks like Omni. And so they kind of just manage it for you. We were working with the EtherFi team, and we made this deal where they were going to delegate, I think it was 600 mil to Omni. Fast forward 4 months, we did this with basically all the LRT deals or LRT teams to get to $1 billion. But fast forward 4 months, and there's so much ETH out there that I think, I've seen definitely a decent amount of speculation like that's too much ETH. Like people, like sure, everybody wants extra yield on their ETH, but who's willing to pay for that? And I honestly think that's a fair argument. We don't need 20 bill of ETH day one, and we're definitely one of, if not the largest, like AVS network out there. So I think that is a very interesting imbalance we're seeing in the market today, and watching it play out will be interesting to say the least.
Do you think it'll be kind of like dispersed then, that 20 billion?
I believe that rehypothecating delegated ETH should be done with great caution. Other people don't share that as much, but when you are rehypothecating ETH, which basically just means, okay, I'm going to take one ETH and secure this network and this network. So it's like, okay, all right, let's think about the extreme of that. Let's say you secure 1,000 networks with that. If one goes wrong, then the other 999 were kind of depending on that ETH to secure it. And so if it just gets deleted because of one network, these other 999 networks get screwed over. So I can tell you from Omni's perspective, we have a very cautious perspective on this compared to other networks that I've seen.
Okay, makes sense. Also, Omni launched its airdrop token Genesis. I'm probably mixing up the words there, alongside its rollout of its staking program. I think there was some feedback on the crypto Twitter world, but what was the process like for that? Why did you go the airdrop route? Tell us the story behind that.
I mean, really, it's interesting watching the evolution of how networks have started to decentralize over time. Obviously we had ICOs in like 2017, 2018, and that was madness. A lot of people made a lot of money, a lot of people lost a lot of money. I think one of the key things here that has happened over time is maybe not regulatory clarity in a way that the government was like, hey, this is how you do it properly, but just the government saying, hey, this is how you don't do it. That's kind of how the industry has gotten more clarity over time. And so the best way to launch a token, and I'm sure things will iterate and evolve over time, but the best way to launch a token from a compliance perspective is to just give it to people, to just airdrop it to prior users of the network. Don't sell it to like end retail. There's a lot of different components here where we've just like seen projects that have received inquiries from like various government organizations. So as we were working with Omni Foundation and like talking about what is the best way to decentralize this, they ended up deciding that releasing things with an airdrop was the most kind of like stable and regulatory compliant way to go about decentralizing the network initially. So that's kind of the logic behind the decision to do an airdrop as opposed to a public token sale.
Okay. And then after the airdrop happened, I feel like, if I'm remembering this correctly, not everyone was like happy about it. You're like annoyed that I brought that up.
No.
Why, like, can you kind of tell us what happened there and like what did you learn from your mistakes? I feel like more often than not, people just try and like glaze over things that happened in the past, but it's so much better to just like talk about these things. And we're friends, so we could do that.
And I actually have a ton of other like co-founders of crypto companies that are are hitting me up like, yo, let's talk about what the best way to do this is. So happy to chat through this. I mean, honestly, the number one lesson that I took away is that the market's going to do what the market's going to do. The day after Omni launched, Iran shot missiles at Israel. We were literally having conversations like, did the foundation just launch a token at the beginning of World War III? Like,
oh God, like, yeah. That's
and so there was
timing, yeah.
yeah, and there was a lot of conversation around this kind of idea of high FDV, low float tokens. So the initial circulating supply of Omni was about 11%. And there was a lot of analysis throughout the industry about like, is this the best way to like launch token? I think a lot of it is kind of funny to think about if you're just doing an airdrop, because teams have no control over the FDV of a token. Like that's entirely just dictated by the market. So it's something that's just fundamentally decided by market participants. But I think Hasib from Dragonfly actually had the most, in a funny way, the most nuanced but accurate take on it. Is he was just like, yeah, everybody's talking about the performance of these various networks after they've launched. The reality is just like the market's kind of slumping right now. And like you can see that in a lot of these tokens over the past weeks, like the market was slumping because there's like quite substantial macro instability as like people, as nations were literally maybe going to like start other wars with one another. So from my perspective as a founder, it's been very interesting to really just realize like, okay, keep building. Just do like create value, build out your network, like continue to innovate. Because the markets, it's crypto markets. Like we know how these charts work. They're just up, down. Yeah.
Yeah. You just got to stay neutral through it all.
Yeah. Really, you just got to become impervious to it. Just like, oh, okay, things are up or down 10% today. Literally doesn't change anything. Like, cause that's the reality of it. And if you do get distracted by stuff like that, you're probably going to fail in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And even prior to the airdrop, post airdrop, I feel like you guys have a pretty strong community. You have like over 400,000 users, which in the scale of like crypto things, developers want users. You guys got some users, right? What does it take to build out a strong community? How did you guys scale it from like one to that?
Yeah, there's a number of interesting components here. I think one thing fundamentally that's really at the core of Omni's community is people that were here in the bear. And so that's something that we have really tried to lean into over time. There's always people who come when things get frothy and prices go up and they get really excited and they leave when prices go down. There's also a contingent of people who have been here for many years and don't sure, they might care about prices, but if prices are down, it's not like they give up hope on what crypto can achieve. So really, we have been building Omni for years now, and a bulk of the development happened in a bear market. And so the core of the community really was established in a bear market with those people who, sure, they might be speculating on various tokens, but they're really there for the long-term vision of crypto. So I think having that as the core and just people seeing us for a very long time building, even when the macro picture, when FTX was blowing up, when Terra exploded, when all these different massively bearish events were happening, they saw a team that was just continuing to crank and build out what they thought was valuable. And now we're back at a point in the market where obviously things are frothier and there are more people who are getting involved now. But I think that's kind of the foundation of our community. It's just people who are here for the vision of crypto, what it can become long-term, and not people who bought Iggy Azalea's latest token and are going to leave the industry once they lose money on that.
Don't bring it up.
Yeah.
Don't bring it up.
Well, did you buy Mother? Yeah.
No, I do not own Mother, but congrats to those who have done well on it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I feel like you have a pretty crypto native audience, especially if these are people who have been around since the bear market. During that time, nobody in my personal life asked me about what's it like being in crypto. In terms of Omni's adoption and growth, do you want it to be mainstream, or do you see this really as a network for crypto people? You're not too worried about mainstream audiences getting into this?
Yeah, in an ideal world, the end users, when they are using applications powered by Omni, they have absolutely no need to be aware of Omni. It's just do you think about GCP or AWS when you load a website? No, you don't. The website just loads. And so in the short term here, the functionality that the first stage of the network is providing by connecting all these rollups, yeah, even that is going to be, it's kind of like a service to other smart contract platforms itself. Like it's a chain to power other expanded functionality for other chains. So it's already facilitating kind of this behind the scenes backend utility. Moving forward, a huge goal of ours is abstract the user experience at large, really through providing this more performant infrastructure, with the end goal that people shouldn't need to know about these things. People don't need to know about the tech that powers the internet today. I think a lot of people try to understand like, but how does Bitcoin work? It's like, do you know how an AWS data center works? Like, like you probably don't.
Probably not.
Yeah. But that's kind of the point. So you don't need to, and it just works. And so crypto will get there. And it's something we're super focused on, but it will take a number of years.
Crypto will just work. Omni will just work.
It will.
Yeah. You guys want to become a decentralized network, right?
Yeah, Omni for sure. Like,
I feel like that's like a buzzword. So
sure.
How do you guys kind of get to that evolution and get to that place where I guess Ethereum, you know, is today?
Yeah.
More so.
So I think the way that this will evolve is that Omni is going to be a decentralized network that is censorship resistant and has extremely high liveness because it's just run by nodes across the world. I don't think any network we'll see. I don't think any network will ever get as decentralized as Ethereum, though. I think that's kind of what it's best at. And what we should do instead is we should build more performant infrastructure around that core decentralized network. But zooming out a bit, just like, why is it a decentralized network? The whole reason I build in this space is because we have the opportunity to build just like neutral societal infrastructure. In order to do that, it has to be censorship resistant, and you can't get a letter from somebody and it just turns off. It needs to just be software that's out there that people across the world get utility out of it, and they operate it as really like a public good for people. So that's kind of how we think about the decentralized network component of it.
Yeah. You said that you think no other chain will kind of advance to the way Ethereum has. I feel like Solana people would disagree with you on that. What are your thoughts on Solana, other ecosystems that maybe want to go the route that Ethereum got like a first head start on?
So specifically with this, I'm talking about the decentralization side. Solana's not prioritizing hitting the number of nodes in the network that the Ethereum network is. And you can see this in their design decisions. You have to run a Solana node basically in a data center. Their approach here is let's build a super high performant blockchain network, but the node requirements are going to be pretty heavy. Ethereum actually spends a ton of time making it so that people can run it on like a 2013 MacBook in their living room. So this all comes down to like, how decentralized do you want the core network to be? Solana basically takes a stance like, it's decentralized enough. Like, sure, the nodes are in data centers, but you get these really fantastic performance properties out of it. So they're kind of optimizing for different things. And so that's what I mean by, I don't know if any network will ever become more decentralized than Ethereum, just because they've kind of stuck their, like, that is their ideological position that anybody should be able to run a node. And that's not really the position of other networks like Solana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we wrap things up, I'd love to know, on the front of Omni, you've been developing and doing it for a couple of years now. Where do you kind of see it going in the next 5+ years?
Yeah. Okay. I'll talk
long term.
I'll talk about 5 years, like that mark.
Yeah.
At that point, the network is going to be connecting all these different rollups, and people, it's going to be a solved problem. This is probably the biggest thing that Solana people make fun of the Ethereum ecosystem for. Like, sure, you're scaling, but you're just in these isolated ecosystems. It's going to be a solved problem. We're going to have taken care of that by then. At that point, far more of the emphasis in crypto at large, and the things that Omni is going to be focused on, is kind of what I'm talking about here, where a vast majority, basically, in 5 years, here's a bet. Okay, in 5 years, 99% of transactions that happen in the Ethereum ecosystem will be through account abstracted wallets, and they are not going to pay the gas costs as end users. And fundamentally, I think that's what we need in order to really onboard. Everybody always says like, onboarding the next 100 million users, onboarding the next billion users.
There's no first billion. I get so annoyed by that phrase.
I know,
first of
it's
all.
ridiculous. But that is what we need to do to get to even like thinking about that stage. And that is primarily where Omni is going to be focused, just leveraging these frontier innovations at the infrastructure level so that people don't have to think about the infrastructure as they're using the applications.
All right, it's a bet.
It's a bet. All right.
We'll have another
do
podcast
this in 5 years. Yeah.
Hopefully sooner than that. But what's one word you would want Omni to be known for?
I think integrated.
Integrated.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. I like that. Not Omni.
Sure.
I don't even know if Omni is a word. Well, now it is.
It is now.
It is now. Omni-chain is what I think of. Before we wrap things up, Austin, I like to ask all my guests this. What is something else you're watching in crypto right now that you think people should pay attention to?
I like this. I'm watching a lot. Reth, actually. Reth is something that is super, super fascinating. Like I touched on with Octane, it's this open source thing that anybody can use and experiment with. Reth is basically an extremely high performance EVM. This is built by the Paradigm team. And they're just building it as an open source implementation of how you can effectively run a really high performance, whether it's a chain or a roll up. This is one of the most interesting open source projects that we're watching in the space. And so this is definitely more engineering heavy, but I think Reth is going to do incredible things over the next couple of years here. I don't think there's going to be a token though. So to anybody who's listening,
who's airdrop farming, just go check out Reth just for the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
And lastly, as someone who's been in this space for a while, can you leave our listeners with a piece of advice?
Yeah, interesting. Piece of advice here. Don't get too excited. Don't get too bearish. Crypto is going to fundamentally restructure society, but it's going to take decades. That is just simply like, it will unseat the US government as controlling the global financial system, but it will take decades. And so just keep a level head over the next couple decades.
All right. Austin, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.